The first people in Cyprus were Stone Age farmers about 8000 BC. By 4000 BC, they were making pottery and copper tools. By about 2500 BC, the people of Cyprus had learned to make bronze. The society of Cyprus gradually grew more sophisticated after 1600 BC. A form of writing was invented. A highly civilized society emerged in Cyprus with many towns and palaces. Trade with other parts of the Mediterranean flourished, and contact with other civilizations was common. After 800 BC, a series of great empires arose in the Middle East. The first was the Assyrian Empire. The Assyrians never actually conquered Cyprus, but they forced its rulers to pay tribute for a short period, from 708 BC to 659 BC. Then, in 545 BC, Cyprus was forced to submit to rule by the Persians. The Persians, in turn, were overthrown by the Greeks, led by Alexander the Great after 333 BC. When Alexander died in 322, his empire split between his generals. One of them seized Egypt. After a period of fighting, he and his successors came to rule Cyprus, and Greek culture became dominant on the island. However, a new power arose: Rome. The Romans took Cyprus in 58 BC, and it became integrated into the Roman Empire. Christianity was introduced into Cyprus by two men in about 45 AD. Then in the 4th century AD, the Roman Empire split into two parts, East and West. Cyprus became part of the Eastern Roman Empire. When the Roman Empire in the West fell in 476 AD, the Eastern part continued, and it was known to us as the Byzantine Empire. And under Byzantine rule, Cyprus prospered despite raids by the Arabs between the 17th century and the 10th century. However, by the 12th century, the Byzantine Empire was declining. In 1184, a Byzantine prince declared Cyprus independent from the rest of the empire. However, independence did not last long. In 1191, Richard I, King of England, captured Cyprus, but he sold it to a Frenchman. The Lusignans ruled Cyprus for 3 centuries. Cyprus became a feudal kingdom where a Catholic elite ruled over the Orthodox majority. However, in the 14th century, the Italian cities of Genoa and Venice were growing increasingly rich and powerful, threatening the independence of Cyprus. Then in 1425, the Mamluks from Egypt raided Cyprus. Finally, a king of Cyprus married a Venetian woman. The king died, leaving the queen sole ruler of Cyprus. In 1489, she was persuaded to abdicate, and Cyprus came under direct Venetian rule. However, the Ottoman Turks were now the rising power in the Mediterranean, and in 1571, they conquered Cyprus. At first, most Cypriots welcomed Turkish rule, preferring it to the oppressive Venetian rule. The feudal system was abolished, and the Turks respected the Orthodox Church. Nevertheless, plague struck Cyprus at intervals, and there were eventually rebellions against Turkish rule. In the 19th century, Britain became a superpower, and in 1875, the Suez Canal opened, and Britain was keen to protect the route to India. In 1878, the British were allowed to occupy and administer Cyprus, although Turkey was technically still sovereign. However, in 1914, the Turks joined Germany's side in the First World War, and Britain formally annexed Cyprus. In 1925, Cyprus was made a British crown colony. However, Greek Orthodox Cypriots now demanded union with Greece, and in 1931, riots took place. During the Second World War, many Cypriots fought for the British. However, when peace came, Greek Orthodox Cypriots demanded union with Greece. Turkish Cypriots, on the other hand, wanted British rule to continue. In 1955, a Greek Cypriot organization called EOKA began a series of bombings in Cyprus. And in 1958, a Turkish organization called TMT was formed, and intercommunal fighting began. Finally, in 1960, Cyprus was granted independence. However, in 1963, the Greeks proposed changes to the constitution. The Turks refused, and there was more intercommunal fighting. In 1964, the UN sent a peacekeeping force to Cyprus. However, a solution was not found, and in 1974, hardline Greeks staged a coup. As a result, in July 1974, Turkish forces invaded northern Cyprus. The island became partitioned. Refugees from both sides crossed the border between the two parts of Cyprus. Meanwhile, the hardliners fell from power, and in December of 1974, the first ruler of Cyprus returned from exile, but he died in 1977. In 1975, the Turkish section called itself the Turkish Federated State of Cyprus, and it seemed that some of the federation of the two parts might be possible. However, in 1983, the Turkish section of Cyprus declared full independence, and it called itself the Turkish Republic of North Cyprus, which only Turkey recognizes today. The two sections of Cyprus remained separate, and in 2004, the Southern Greek Republic of Cyprus joined the EU. However, in 2008, Cyprus joined the Euro. As a result, Cyprus suffered a severe economic crisis in 2013. However, the economy is now growing again. In 2024, the population of the whole of Cyprus was 1.2 million. And that's the end of the history. I'll get to some fun facts. The capital of Cyprus, Nicosia, is the only city that has been constantly inhabited by someone since the Bronze Age in Cyprus. There is not a single natural freshwater lake on the island, but there are plenty of reservoirs, as many as 108, and locals call them lakes. The next fact is on the island of Cyprus, an entire city is included in the UNESCO World Heritage List. The name of the city is Paphos, or Paphos. The next one is that Cyprus is home to more domestic cats than it does humans. I think it's around 1.5 million cats on the island. And the last fact is Cyprus was the first country in the world to put its map on its national flag, which you've probably seen in this video. Anyways, that'll be it for the history of Cyprus.